I love going up to London. I get on a bus, I go down to the train station, I sit on the train for about an hour and a half, and I arrive at London Bridge. You know, the place where the Shard is, and the bridges. It's a really cool experience. I'm from an island called Jersey. The only train we have is called Le Petit Train. It goes about 5 miles an hour along the seafront. They give you an audio commentary of the castles and the tax evasion. What we're gonna do is we're gonna walk around London, we're gonna look at all the watches, I'm gonna bring you along with me, and we're gonna start in Brick Lane. Brick Lane is really cool. There's just tables of vintage stuff everywhere, records, tech, clothes. There's so many different food options. There are people everywhere. There are queues all the way down the lane. What are all of these people queuing for?
Sorry, what is this queue for?
Bagels.
Bagels. Are they good bagels?
Best buy.
Amazing. Okay.
Bagels. Well, if this video gets 3,000 likes, I'll make a video dedicated to reviewing that bagel shop. The other thing in Brick Lane is my friend David.
I literally walked straight past you.
David is a watch enthusiast. He's a watch collector, he repairs watches. Oh, and he's actually an authorized Rolex, Breitling and Patek Philippe watchmaker. We talk about watches all the time. Honestly, you should find a friend like David. Cheese toasty consumed, it's time to grab a coffee and go back to David's hotel and talk about some of his new watches. Who better to tell us about these watches than David himself? Take it away, David.
This is a 1960s Omega Seamaster with caliber 601. I replaced the balance assembly and polished the case. Dating to 1994, this Rolex date just has a Jubilee dial, which I bought with me to either trade or sell. This is a 1920s Rolex Marconi. Rolex only used the Marconi name on the very best quality movements of the time. This is an early example with unsigned dial.
Well, I guess it's time to go watch hunting, and for that, we have to head to Burlington Arcade. Burlington Arcade is home of the Grails, land of dreams, affordable to very few people, seriously fucking expensive, but a really cool place to look at watches. Some of the watches in this arcade are the most sought after watches on the planet. Look at this vintage Rolex Submariner, the one that James Bond initially wore. Or what about this 1950s Rolex Space Dweller, a Japanese exclusive dial variant of the Explorer 1, which is worth over £100,000. Burlington Arcade is also home to the Vintage Watch Company, which has an absolutely phenomenal collection of vintage Rolexes. Honestly, you don't need to buy a watch or even be into them to appreciate looking at these. This is better than a museum. It's ironic to me that I lose all track of time staring at all of the watches in this window. Just sit back and enjoy looking at all of these. They are pieces of history. Susanna Lovis is another brilliant shop which has a fine display of vintage timepieces. Look at some of these old Explorer dial Oyster Perpetual Rolexes. They have such beautiful patina. Another shop a bit further down called Somlo had this sleek Cartier tank with a plain black dial. Very understated and elegant. I recently got into Cartier because of Tyler the Creator. Cartier have such an artistic feel to them. While a lot of them are quartz movements, there's no doubt they are in their own lane with design and some of my favourite watches at the moment. This shop also had a beautiful collection of vintage Omega watches, some of which I had never seen before, like this old chronograph which had several gorgeous blue steel hands. Can you see why I like coming up to London? It's such a treat to be able to walk through Burlington Arcade. Those watches are holy grails, and to get to see them in person is just magical. I love it. Round the corner from Burlington Arcade is New Bond Street. That's where all of the boutiques are, and there's one in particular that I want to go to. Any guesses? Let's take a look. If you guess Seiko, then you win. All of the points. I absolutely love Seiko, and to be able to come to the boutique and speak to some of the staff there about their incredible line of watches, it was just lovely. Seiko is one of those brands where if you know, you know. You're not necessarily going to impress a table of people with the Seiko on your wrist, but if there's another Seiko enthusiast sat at that table, you can guarantee you're going to be talking to them the whole night. It's an absolute pleasure to meet someone else obsessed with Seiko because there's such a history with this brand, such a significant history with this brand, and it still lives on to this day. And they do some of the most incredible watch releases ever. They do limited editions based off of some of their most significant watches that they've made throughout history, and I recently picked up the Seiko Navigator Timer. Now, I know what some of you are going to be saying. Why did you spend £1,500 on a watch? Well, surprisingly, that's actually quite inexpensive for a watch, but you could have bought a vintage Rolex, Elliot. Well, the thing is, this isn't just a Seiko. Let's take a closer look. This is a limited edition recreation of the famous 1968 Seiko Navigator Timer, which was a pioneer in the realm of sports-type GMT models, being the first mechanical GMT with a rotating bezel. This faithful recreation is powered by the new in-house 6R54 caliber movement, the first mechanical GMT movement for the Seiko Prospects line with a 3-day power reserve. You can use this watch to tell 3 different time zones simultaneously at a quick glance on your wrist. They're limited to 4,000 pieces, and I mean, come on. It's a modern vintage watch with all of the bells and whistles. It's brand new, it's gonna last me forever. And isn't it just so sick that a company is willing to do this? Could you imagine if Apple were like, yeah, we're gonna remake the first iPhone, except it's gonna have all of the modern innards of an iPhone inside it, and you can use it for Apple Pay and stuff? They would never do that. But Seiko, they don't give a f***. David had a little errand to run in Knightsbridge. While we were there, I spotted this beautiful piano dial Cartier tank reference 3196. This would set you back about £3,500, but what an absolute beauty. There was only one spot left for us to visit on this occasion, and that's Hatton Garden. David has been coming to London for years to buy, sell and repair watches. He's really well known amongst all of the shops around London, and one of the places he loves coming to visit is a place called the Arcade. It's just a place filled with a bunch of stalls of independent watch dealers, and it's a bit of a free-for-all of, what's your best price? And I'll give you this for that. Not all of these watches are thousands, which was quite nice. There was a dealer actually selling a bunch of watches in the sub £1,000 price range. David actually picked one up. We'll look at that in a sec. Obviously, where there had been some custom dials fitted to Rolexes, there was a vast selection of original dials for sale, which was interesting to look through. A fun little place, very different from Burlington Arcade earlier. We had a final wander around, and then we finished our day on a high, halfway up in the Shard. The watch David picked up was this Breitling. He picked it up for under £1,000, and with a clean and a service, it could easily be worth double. That's it for this video. The last thing to mention is just how cool the urinals are in this building. See you next time.